Jinping's intentions are deep, and his agenda is global and hegemonic. There's no doubt about that. But Taiwan presents a democracy that has great friends around the world and great friends in the region. And I am convinced that there are a number of ways in which Xi Jinping is watching what's happening to Vladimir Putin, to the Russian military inside of Ukraine today, that must be giving him great pause. The Republic of China, Taiwan, deserves to have its sovereignty, its diplomatic sovereignty, its economic sovereignty, its political sovereignty, that the United States ought to recognize that as, which will create a system which prevents authoritarian regimes around the world from using force to try and destroy the people of a sovereign nation. So there are certainly similar risks. Authoritarian regimes with great power who desire to use aggressive military force to bully around smaller nations. The world is replete with examples of this. We're seeing one take place in Ukraine today. It's absolutely tragic. I'm praying for the people of Ukraine, and we're all watching the people of Ukraine do amazing work to defend their own country in ways that I think many did not expect. As for the connectivity between that and the risk that Xi Jinping might consider the same kind of thing with respect to Taiwan, Xi Jinping's intentions are deep, and his agenda is global and hegemonic. There's no doubt about that. But Taiwan presents a democracy that has great friends around the world and great friends in the region. And I am convinced that there are a number of ways in which Xi Jinping is watching what's happening to Vladimir Putin, to the Russian military inside of Ukraine today, that must be giving him great pause for having met with Vladimir Putin just several weeks ago and said that their relationship was unlimited. The Chinese people that are trapped inside of Ukraine regret that statement. The good people of Russia, who know that their leader is destroying human life in ways that are random and evil and depraved. I think there are many Russian people who can see that this isn't the right direction. It's not what they want for their country either. I think every leader has to confront the fact that the world is watching what takes place in ways that in previous conflicts the world couldn't see. And each and every day you're watching the world unite in ways that I think are important and fundamental. I pray only this. We weren't able to deter Vladimir Putin from doing what he did in Ukraine, from crossing this line, from now launching countless weapon systems that could be aimed only at destroying morale and civilian life and aren't truly military targets. That is a failure to uphold a deterrence model that convinces folks like Putin that they ought not engage in this activity. I am convinced that if we all do the right thing, the United States, Taiwan, every country in Southeast Asia, Pacific Island nations, Australia, Japan, South Korea, if we all work together to build out a consistent understanding that we're going to draw the line, we're going to be prepared to fight for the things that matter most of us, that we can continue to keep military deterrence in place. And then finally, much of what Xi does to the world isn't military. Much of what he does is diplomatic, it is information warfare, it is economic warfare. We've all seen this. America's seen them, Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party steal billions of dollars worth of technology and destroy countless jobs across the United States of America. We have to confront the Chinese Communist Party in every dimension of Xi's use of his power, because he is using every element of his power, his nation-state's power, to try and undermine the Western way of life. Talked about this morning was clarity. When a nation-state's preparedness to defend itself is not demonstrable, when you can't see it, when you're not clear about the things that you're prepared to fight for, and you haven't been preparing for that for a while, bad guys begin to feel like they can move about the cabin and do precisely what you saw Vladimir Putin do. So while I'm pleased that the world has united, that I've watched what Taiwan has done for the people of Ukraine, it is noble, it is important. The world thanks you for your generosity to the Ukrainian people. We weren't able to provide this level of capstone deterrence, which would have prevented Vladimir Putin from doing precisely what he did. I think that is a lesson for all of us. This morning I made the simple declarative statement that we should just acknowledge the reality that the Republic of China, Taiwan, deserves to have its sovereignty, its diplomatic sovereignty, its economic sovereignty, its political sovereignty, that the United States ought to recognize that as fundamentally consistent with who we are as a nation, and where Taiwan places itself in the world. I think it's those kinds of things, that clarity, that recognition of the simple truths, the things we all know, but sometimes we're just a little worried that even saying so might provoke a bad guy. I think we've realized that the most provocative thing one can do is fail to demonstrate resolve. I think when the world sees alliances frayed, or they hear disinformation from the CCP or from Russia that says that the West, those of us who value democracy and freedom, that our nations are in decline, I think when they hear those repeated and we aren't resolved to demonstrate that those are fundamentally untrue, that authoritarian regimes feel more free to undertake precisely the kind of adventurism that's killing Ukrainians today. We can't let that happen. It is too sacred a duty to do better than that. We have the capacity to do it. I'm confident that we all have the will to do it. It will take determined leadership to execute that, and I'm counting on the United States and Taiwan to both be part of leading that model, which will create a system which prevents authoritarian regimes around the world from using force to try and destroy the people of a sovereign nation. One can't answer the question about the likelihood of this in a static way. It depends. It depends on how we respond and behave. It depends on the work that we do. It depends on our willingness to listen to Taiwanese leadership, who tells us we need certain equipment, we need certain training assistance. You all are prepared to expend your money to purchase these systems. We should be prepared to help you train and use them effectively as well. So you can't answer how likely it is in a static way, because it turns on the willingness of the Western world to demonstrate that the costs for Xi Jinping engaging in that kind of activity are just too high. The last thing I want to say about this is, and I think this is really important, most of the conquest that Xi Jinping has achieved during his time hasn't been undertaken militarily. It's been done through his use of the Belt and Road Initiative. It's been done through his use of information operations around the world. It's been done through influence operations around the world. It's been done by using enormous economic power of the Chinese Communist Party to coerce small governments and say, boy, if you recognize Taiwan, we will stop sending tourists or visitors there. This just is an example of how they've used their economic power. So when one thinks about cross-strait relationships and the risk of Xi Jinping behaving in a way that is aggressive with respect to Taiwan, one shouldn't simply think of ships and planes and artillery, but one should think about yuan and diplomacy and information. Those are the spaces, cyberspace, information space, all of the places which, as sure as I'm sitting here today, Xi Jinping is thinking about trying to exert influence here in Taiwan each and every day, and trying his best to do it. And we have to make sure that we are equally resolved in preventing this from taking place.